the church has, unfortunately, and this is a very gross overstatement, but has left kind of a body count of people because we're trying to do all this stuff with presentation and technology. And I'm not saying that presentation isn't important, but that we really think through the things that we're doing and run it through some sort of filter before we just start throwing money, time, and energy creating systems and doing these things that aren't sustainable and maybe not needed, but maybe they are. And so I'm again, my wonder switch got flipped a long time ago, and so I am always just asking the questions and like wondering and wrestling and things like that. And so like a scripture that I read that kind of like haunts me when it comes to church and like the things that we're doing, and this comes from the Message, and I don't know theologically where people stand on the Message, but I have it pulled up here, and it's Amos 5:21, and it says, I can't stand your religious meetings. I'm fed up with your conferences and conventions. I want nothing to do with your religion projects, your pretentious slogans and goals. I'm sick of your fundraising schemes and your public relations and image making. I've had all I can take with your noisy ego music. Pretty strong words. And then he says, when was the last time you sang to me? Do you know what I want? I want justice, oceans of it. I want fairness, rivers of it. That's what I want. That's all that I want.
Hey friends, welcome back to the podcast. It's Gary, Community Manager. I'm stoked to have you here again. As always, it's always a pleasure to have you back, and I appreciate you coming in, watching some of the cool content we produce, and engaging with us here at BoxCast. And listen, if you haven't done so already, you need to like, comment, and subscribe so that way we can help that algorithm push our content further, so we can help more churches do better live streaming and content production. Today's going to be a really special one. This is one of my favorite friends in all of church production world. His name is Cory Reynolds. And Cory, how you been, buddy?
Good, man. It's very kind of you. Glad to be here. Love BoxCast and excited to see what the conversation holds today.
Yeah, I'm excited too. So if you're not familiar with Cory, which you probably aren't, because Cory's not typically the face of any company in real life terms, but Cory started a company called Contrast Creative, which is now part of Concept Pixels. Cory was on staff with some prominent churches, but before branching out into his own current role with his own company as a media specialist within Contrast. But he's worked for big names like Chris Tomlin, and he's also worked in big names like The Belonging Co. So he specializes in digital media and production and brings fresh insights to the world of church production, which is why I brought you in today, my friend, because you've helped do a lot of work and a lot of stuff. So go ahead, take the wheels, man. Give me a little bit of background about you, about some of your ministry. Give me a little bit about Contrast and what happened in April with it becoming part of Concept Pixels.
Yeah, man. Well, kind of a nutshell is I grew up in church, grew up in a small Southern Baptist church in Lake Havasu, Arizona. And it was there I think I was 11 years old. They put in a brand new sound system, and they in church, they asked for volunteers that would want to help run sound. And 11-year-old kid, like popped my hand up, and I was the only person. And so there was the guy that ran it. He's probably 17, 18, something like that. He actually took me under his wing and like started showing me stuff. Here's what gain does. Here's what EQ sounds like. Here's what effects do, and all that stuff. And so for, I don't know, 3-4 years, I just sat next to him every Sunday morning, every Sunday night, every Wednesday night, and just learned as much as I could. Never ran it. Never. I just sat there and that's where it started. I just kind of became obsessed with it. It was kind of all I thought about at school, and I couldn't wait to get to church and do that. And it's at that same church that we had a missionary come in and was telling us about all the stuff that he was doing, and where I felt like the call to full-time ministry. And that began a lifelong kind of journey of like, what does that look like? And so kind of from there, we moved to Colorado and moved to, it was kind of a larger church. At the time was one of the fastest growing churches in America. And they had all the toys, all the better sound systems, lights, and stuff like that. And so I was just elated to be there. And was given opportunities to grow. And so I really really from a young age just cut my teeth learning sound, lights, video, all that stuff. And then we had a youth pastor come to that church that was a musician and really had a heart for worship and all of that stuff, named Wayne Hansen. And he, I went to him and I said, man, I'd love to learn how to lead people into worship. And he took the time to teach me some chords on the guitar, and a group of us guys kind of formed a worship band. And this was back in like the mid 90s, as they say now. And so we started doing that. And so, and even kind of rewinding a little bit further than there, I remember the first time I was, growing up Southern Baptist, we kind of had like the piano and the organ, and that was it. It was, Term to Hymn number 247 and
Yep.
whatever. And it was, and I think there's some really great things about that, and not bashing that at all. But we went to a youth camp in Centrifuge when I was in middle school, and it was the first time I'd ever been to church where they had an acoustic guitar, bass, drums, and I was like, what is this? What's happening here? And so when I came back from camp, I asked our youth director if I could prepare a little like worship service for our youth group, and she, they said sure. And so I was literally like taking a cassette tape and recording, and it was like the music was on the left and the vocals were on the right or whatever, and transparencies. And so every week I would prepare little worship sets and photocopying the words on transparencies, overhead projector. And I remember at a young age, I was probably maybe 12, 13 years old, having these encounters with the Lord just in my room, preparing these worship sets. And I had no idea. I was a little Baptist boy. I had no idea about presence of God or just anything like that. And I'd just be weeping. I'd have my hands in the air, just be singing these songs of God. I have no theological training, no nothing. Just these like really just kind of like really cool encounters with the Lord. And I think that was a foundation that kind of like set me up for this love for the presence of God in local church, and this like passion for technical and arts and sound and lights and video. And so all throughout my story, all throughout growing up, was opportunities that kind of melded those two things. So after high school, even going to college, I went to a leadership school in Oklahoma City that was a church, and they also had the college, they had a school, and they had a summer camp. And I got the opportunity to lead worship in the mornings and then be a part of the AV stuff at night. And from there, I got a job back at the church I kind of grew up in, Colorado, as the technical director. Had no business being a technical director, but they hired me anyway, and started. And there I started to kind of fall in love more with video production. We had people to run sound and people to do the live switch and lyrics and all that, but we didn't really have anybody to create videos and stuff like that. So it was at that job that they took us to a Willow Creek's art conference. This was probably in 2000, 2001, something like that.
Wow. Okay.
And up to this point, and one other small part of my story that I didn't mention is in high school, I worked at a TV station and was doing like PA work. And then when I left, I was directing like pre-recorded like news broadcasts and stuff like that. Right. And so up to this point, my only exposure to media was like information, it wasn't engagement or whatever. It was like translating information to some degree and then making like silly videos with my friends or whatever. So I'm at this Willow Creek Arts Conference, and I'm watching these dramas that they do in these videos, and I'm crying and I'm laughing. And all of a sudden it was like something unlocked in me as an artist, and then really been on that journey since then, because I think that's a lifelong journey. But unlocked this wonder in me of like, what's possible and what can we do with these tools? And then that kind of set me down a journey of like, this is powerful stuff like that we have access to. and then now even later in life, like discovering the responsibility that comes with that, as far as when it comes to shepherding and congregation and pastorally, like what does all this look like and mean, and are we using this right, and really like wrestling with all those tensions and stuff like that. So kind of like my career has been both sides of things, both um, in the behind the scenes and in, you know, and then in front of the mic, although I haven't done a lot of that stuff in years. Every once in a while, when they can't find any other musicians at church, I get to play, and I love it. But yeah, and so like from churches to clients to whatever, just a big passion for ministry and the local church, and then how we use technology um, to help other people experience the presence of God is really like what I felt like a big part of my calling maybe would be, at least passion directed would be.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's it's an incredible process when you start off in something and you go to moving into the scope of just where you're going to be in the future, right? Like the reason I say it that way, and it's kind of vague, is because that's kind of the similar process that I had. Like
Mhm.
I got a full ride to DeVry University out here in Ohio, right?
Yeah.
I beat out my best friend for a scholarship to go there, and then I had actually was beginning to enroll in the through that process while being taking things that I was doing in the Air Force. Um, and thought that this is a life. I'm going to go and do computer engineering and just be a nerd and hack things for the life. And then I got saved, and then all of a sudden I'm being ushered off to ministry school, and you
Wow.
know, and so yeah. So I mean, the whole process that takes to get you to a point where you're supposed to be, like the Lord brought me here to BoxCast in 2018, and it was because of out of desperation in ministry. So
Mhm.
I had some really difficult, toxic things, and the Lord brought me out of that. And BoxCast has been like a really great place for me to grow, especially because I get to talk to awesome people like you and churches, and build community and in relationships. So it's a cool process to see how all those things work down the line, because we never quite really know what's going to come to the end of that line,
Yeah.
or what we're being prepared for. And David was prepared ahead of his kingship, so it's kind of the same scenario for us. So it's just cool to hear, man. But I'm glad you're here with me. I'm glad to know a little bit more of your story. But let me ask you a couple of questions. What are you, Apple or PC? Who are you?
Very much Apple. Very much.
Okay, my bad. Very much Apple. I like the way you
Yeah.
said that.
Yeah. To a
Okay.
fault. I think, I don't know how much money I've given that company, but it's a lot. It's way too much.
Probably too much money. That's right.
Yes.
Yep. Now, knowing that you're also you not only are you a production expert, like I mean, you really are, because there's some big things we'll get into here in just a minute about your journey, but also like some of the things that you see in church worlds and the big names that you've been helped producing in the past and as well in the future. But if you could, because a lot of people like to know this stuff from big production companies or big producers, what is like your favorite piece of equipment that you own right now?
Hmm. Wow. That's, I would probably say it's a toss up because, man, my favorite, I would have to say my BoxCaster encoder, right?
Hey, shameless plug for us. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it.
I mean, I really am like a camera guy. I love cameras, and so for when I first started getting into cameras, it was I bought an EX3, Sony EX3, and at that time it was right before like all the DSLR stuff started coming out and the large sensor stuff. So I bought what was called a lettuce depth of field adapter and put on
Okay.
the front of it, and it like, yeah, it did some weird magic, and you could put like still frame lenses on the front. So it was this massive rig, and had rails and everything, and it had this rotating piece of glass in there. So you would put the DSLR lens on the front, had this rotating glass, and you would zoom into this thing, and then you would get the like 35 millimeter look. But when I started, I didn't know. I'd been doing video professionally for probably 10 years at this point when I did it, but I was like, what's a 12 millimeter lens? What's what does that mean? What's a fast lens? What is that? What's a T2? What does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
And there was this guy, Philip Bloom, online who had all these resources. And man, I just fell in love with cinematography. And he was able to kind of like teach about all that stuff. And it was like life-changing for me. So I had done all this stuff, and then I was like, man, this is so cool. And I was getting a bunch of work because my stuff looked different than everybody else's. It looked more cinema. And then my buddy was like, dude, I just bought this 5D Mark II. And he showed up, and it was like this just regular camera, and it looked amazing. And I was like, man, this whole world is going to change. And I was also really bummed because I had this super heavy, camera, but it was cool, and it served its purpose, and it was awesome. But so I started there, and then I shot my first commercial on a Red, and
there it is.
So it was the Red Epic.
There it is.
I was just like, man, I was so blown away with what we were able to capture.
That's funny you say that, because I was just talking with Wade, our producer, and Wade said, and he's looking at me right now through the window. He goes, if he says a red kimono, I'm gonna love him. I'm gonna fall in love with him.
Yeah, yeah. So it started for me with. I mean, when I first saw Red come on the scene, I was enamored, but I was just like, I'll never be able to.
Yeah.
Just so when they came out the Red one. So getting to shoot on the Red Epic, I was just beside myself, and the images that it was producing were just beautiful. And now on that commercial, we had grips and gaffers and lighting trucks and all that. So we could have shot it on a lot of different things. We had so many talented people on that, would have looked great. But the Red, and I fell in love with the workflow. So then I ended up buying, I couldn't afford a Epic, but I bought a Scarlet, and I bought another Scarlet, and I used those for a long time. And then, man, Blackmagic started coming out with some really cool stuff that was really cost effective. And so and my Scarlets were aging, and so I sold my Scarlets, and then I bought Blackmagics, and I had those up until a couple of years ago. And we did a shoot with, I think it was Tomlin for his Good Friday service a couple of years ago, and we shot on all Komodos with Concept Pixels, which is now the company that I work for. And I was like, oh man, I miss Red so much. Like we shot some beautiful stuff on the Blackmagics, and we even the first big project I shot with Tomlin, we shot all on pockets, and it looked amazing. It looked great. And I love their camera. I love the UI. Like the menu system is awesome. Yes. You can't beat the price. Like it's so economical, but there's just something about the Red that I just love. And I think for me, above like my favorite thing, I just like being inspired by my tools. So like I love Sony. I love the look of it. I love the A7 series, the FX3, but I hate their menus. And I'm always like so frustrated using those cameras that I'm not inspired.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm frustrated by it. Where like a pocket cam, like you pick it up and like just go right to town, and like the menu's so easy. It looks great. It's affordable. You can throw an SSD in there and shoot forever. And with the Red, I'm just inspired by the way it feels, the way the image looks, the color science, the workflow. And so then I sold all my Blackmagic stuff and started buying Komodos. And yeah, so now I think at Concept we're up to like 13 of them. I think we have 13.
Oh my goodness. Oh man. Wait until I tell Wade. Wade's gonna flip his lid. Wade's gonna be, I'm gonna send this to him later. He's gonna be like, what is going on?
Yeah, so we've got all the Komodos, and then we've got all the Canon Cine servo glass. So we've got the 50 to 1000s, all servo zoom, the 25 to 250s, the 17 to 120s. All that. And it's cool to, coming from news and even live events, broadcast, I had a lot of history with multicam stuff, but I hated the way broadcast looked. I was always like, I want to shoot 24p, I want depth of field, whatever. And so then when we started to have more and more cameras come out, and then I was like, all right, what does it look like to do multicam cinema? And maybe jumping ahead a little bit, when I went on staff at The Belonging, that was really what they wanted to do is they said, we want a multicam situation, but we don't want it to look like broadcast. We want to shoot 24p. We want to be 4K, and we want large sensor. We want depth of field and for it to feel cinematic. And I was like, and so really for me, I kind of transitioned back into the multicam world in COVID. Because I was doing more, 1 or 2 camera stuff for, we did a ton of documentaries, TV commercials, some short film stuff, TV series, like all that stuff where we were shooting broadcast stuff, but like movies, and then, or in more a cinematic format, I guess I should say. And then it was COVID that was like, oh, like, what if we, which wasn't like a revolutionary thing. People were already doing it, but to get large sensor camera 4K in 23.98 in 2020, there was, I believe, only one switcher that would do it.
Yes.
And it was the Blackmagic.
Yeah.
And so now there's more and more that are
doing it. They just like flipped the lid after COVID. Every switcher's coming out nowadays is all the same things you can do. Now that puts me back into the world of like fear, because Blackmagic was always notorious for only doing 59.96. I'm sorry, 59.94, and you couldn't change that. Like you couldn't send something that was 29.98 or send something that was 30 frames because it just the switcher wouldn't see it. And it was it was garbage. And then they brought the mini out during COVID, and then that changed the entire scope for progressive scan video and upscaling it. Instead of 720p, we'll put it 1080. It was just like complete bonkers the way it changed. But I mean, you've got stacks. Like you got stacks of cameras. I know, I can see it already. Holy mackerel, 13 kimonos. Wow. That's intense, man. That's intense. So with that, Cory, let me go into that, because you just rattled like so much cool stuff. But let me ask you this question. You got a little lone pastor of a church of 150 and maybe even 100, and he can't do kimono. Yeah. Where does he start? What camera does he get?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think like I don't know what camera, to be honest. I think you get what you can afford. And I always like, there's always two sides. Again, this tension, especially when it comes to church, of like, buy the best you can when you can, buy the best, cry once, spend the money, twist the arm of whoever you got to twist to get the best you can. Maybe that's a $150 Best Buy camera. These days, if you've got good lighting and you've got stuff, but also I think our culture is really trained to, it's really about the content more than how it looks. And I think we can spend a lot of time trying to like Sony, Red, Canon, Panasonic, whatever. And it's like, there's so many good choices. Like there's so many great cameras out there now. And so buy what you can and buy what serves. But I think the wrestle then also comes in kind of more with this like pastoral side of me, that just growing up in church and whatever, is like, what should we be doing and whatever. And I know you're a church front guy, I think. And so I don't know if you're familiar with Zach Hicks at all. Have you heard of him?
Yes, I have. Yeah. So
I feel like he asks some really good questions when it comes to kind of the theology of technology. And, when we talk about introducing a new technology into church, he asks like a really great question of like, what possibilities does this open up for us? And what possibilities does this close down for us? And evaluating everything we do kind of through that lens and counting the costs of both, so that then you can either make the decision of like, are we going to do this, or how can we pastorally mitigate or compensate for the possibilities that this is going to close down for us? So I would say that should, like, he has a video on the Church Front website. Yep. It's an hour long, and I think it's called The Theology of Technology or something like that. Should be like a 101 course for anybody in ministry, because it's not even about new technology, right? Like he talks about even like a cathedral, like that's hundreds of years old, and like what opportunities does this open up, and this sort of architecture, and what opportunities does it close down? And so I think about that question a lot, and then I also think about like, what systems are we building? Like if you say you've got a pastor and he's just like, hey, I want a camera, I want a live stream, da 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 da, and there's not really discussion, you're just executing what they want, or you have a client, is really, I'm thinking about like three things, kind of like the people that are going to be running it, what processes are we going to set up, and then the technology. So like what you build your ministry, what you build technology wise, is what you're going to have to maintain. And so thinking about that long term, I think asking some of these questions and really sitting with them set us up for success more than just, yeah, you should buy a red, or you shouldn't, and we should buy a Canon, or whatever. Is like, what are we trying? And probably the other question I would ask is like, what problem are we trying to solve?
Right. That's a big piece of that. Yeah.
Because so much of creative and artistic sometimes can get put on the camera, the lens, or whatever. But man, that's the vehicle that's helping tell a story or whatever. Like, and so asking the right questions of like, what do we want to do? What opportunities is going to open up? What's it going to close down? How are we going to mitigate those things? And then evaluating like, what's the technical abilities of our team, and how can I create systems and processes to help train them, to build them up, and help sustain? Because as we know, the church can sometimes just be a bulldozer of people, unfortunately, just to try to accomplish a really important mission. And
we just railroad it.
Yeah. And it's just like, man, just get in there, get it done. But actually at the church front conference, I used this analogy of like, do you remember the movie Homeward Bound?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I do.
So what I for some reason I like looked that up, and like I think 27 animals died during the making of that film.
Oh my gosh.
Which is like
terrible.
One animal for every like 3 minutes of the film, like an animal died. And so it made me think about how we pastor people, and like the church has, unfortunately, and this is a very gross overstatement, but has left kind of a body count of people, because we're trying to do all this stuff with presentation and technology. And I'm not saying that presentation isn't important, but that we really think through the things that we're doing and run it through some sort of filter before we just start throwing money, time, and energy creating systems and doing these things that aren't sustainable and maybe not needed, but maybe they are. And so I'm again, my wonder switch got flipped a long time ago, and so I am always just asking the questions and like wondering and wrestling and things like that. And so like a scripture that I read that kind of like haunts me when it comes to church and like the things that we're doing, and this comes from the Message, and I don't know theologically where people stand on the Message, but I have it pulled up here, and it's Amos 5:21, and it says, I can't stand your religious meetings. I'm fed up with your conferences and conventions. I want nothing to do with your religion projects, your pretentious slogans and goals. I'm sick of your fundraising schemes and your public relations and image making. I've had all I can take with your noisy ego music. Pretty strong words. And then he says, when was the last time you sang to me? Do you know what I want? I want justice, oceans of it. I want fairness, rivers of it. That's what I want. That's all that I want. And man, that scripture like shook me when I first heard that. I heard a pastor talk about that. And I'm not going to claim to know all the theological context of that scripture or whatever, but I think it's at minimum, it's a good, like, warning sign, a check engine light to just say like, hey, let's be really intentional about the things we do, the technology that we deploy, and count the costs of those things, good and bad. And let's have a pastoral, thoughtful approach to the things that we implement versus just throwing technology at things, which is fun, but it's anybody can do that.
Well, I mean, we have this mindset, this conceptual mindset in a lot of church atmospheres, right? That if we had X, we could achieve X, right? And that's kind of the difficulty that you face with a lot of churches, because a lot of churches have the same conceptual idea that, like, if we had $2,000, we could do this X thing with our live stream, or this X thing with our audio, or this X thing with our video. And then we're going to be able to produce this one thing. Or they also go back to the fact, like, if we could do, if we could have the roaming cameras and the sliding cameras like Red Rocks Church does, when they're doing their cinematic scrolling across and panning, like, if we had that feature, this would turn out this result. And the problem with that mentality is, like, that's not how it works, right? I can be in a testament to that, because I own my own small business, and in the process I'm thinking, hey, if I did this one thing, then I'm going to see this result. Somebody's going to buy this product, or somebody's going to go to my YouTube channel and subscribe, and I'm going to hit 1,000 followers in 2 months, and I'm going to be able to monetize. But it doesn't work like that. Like, there is a factor for us to understand that what we put into something, there is going to be a result, but there has to be a process to take that time. And so by being intentional with how we do so, that makes the most sense. And a lot of churches, they get this wanderlust. Even the smaller churches, like, I think it happens more in the smaller churches because they're just so wishful, right? Like those churches who are sub 100, and they may be out in the middle of Oklahoma and don't have much. But that's really where ministry kicks in for those churches. Like, that's the point of being a community within your community. Like, being in that area, being in that space, and doing something well. And then, watching those blessings come as, the Lord builds your church and makes you impact. Because really all this matters is that we impact people. That's all that matters. And that's the way BoxCast feels. I know that's the way Concept Pixels is. I know that's the way, America's worship pastor, Chris Tomlin, would feel. It's like, it's all about impacting people, and it's all about who you're serving. And if you're serving technology and serving money in the church versus serving Jesus and the people, then you're obviously not doing the right things. And so it makes no sense.
I 100% agree. I think, like, as we talk about creating atmospheres and environments for people to worship, to come and worship, like, I think our goal should be creating an atmosphere for people to come together as a community of believers and commune with God, to listen to what he has to say, and for us to say and declare things back to him in a corporate environment. And so, like, the wonder, or the whatever, maybe the desire to look like Hillsong or Life Church or Red Rocks or whatever. Again, this is my wonder switch of just like, we're looking to these models that really are only 40-ish years old and are really unproven. And to be frank, we've seen a lot of them fail.
That's true.
For how they're set up. And so I think it's time for the church to ask better questions versus and to say, hey, what is maybe God doing now? And, or even better yet, like, what is our DNA and what does God want to do through us? And, like, when I was at Belonging, Pastor Alex and Henry, amazing people, amazing artists and creatives. That DNA is natural. So, like, lights, the sound, whatever, we worked really hard at it and we wanted it to be excellent, but that wasn't ever the priority. The priority was God's presence. And those things flowed naturally out of it. Now, not to create too magical of a painting, because it wasn't always that. There, it was hard work and budgets and, all that stuff. But, like the church that we serve at here in Nevada now, the DNA that flows out of that pastor is community. And, like, he is a very inclusive and communal person. He likes being with people and things like that. And so really, like, what's the DNA of your church, and how can you help bring some of those things to life, versus like looking at a night of worship from Hillsong or whatever and trying to duplicate that. I think has created a karaoke version of church that isn't
Oh yeah.
really people.
Well,
And
it's created, yeah. I mean, and the karaoke thing, that makes sense. It's created a facade of what church is. It's created a facade of what church should be. It's also created a facade of what is capable. Because I mean,
yeah, so
my
true.
my church is 150 people strong, all right, and
Yeah,
we facilitate that atmosphere. We're not Red Rocks. We don't want to be Red Rocks. I don't want to be Elevation. Do I want to sound like them on my live stream? Well, sure I do. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. But I
yeah,
don't. I'm not going to be. I'm not going to be the belonging. Like I'm not. My wife is not Carrie Joe. I'm not Cody Carnes. Okay, I'm not sitting there. I'm not Brandon. Right. I'm not mixing the audio. I'm not taking care of the technical directing. I'm not doing all that like those guys will. And
yeah,
that's the thing. The DNA of your church is what matters most. It's the important feature of any church is knowing who you are and what you serve and who you serve and where you're doing it. And that's the kicker. So that brings me to like, because obviously, Cory, obviously, I mean, we have to get to the point that some pretty big names in this industry of music and production. We've already floated two big names here. So just give the listeners, and viewers here, just give them a little bit more of a taste of who you've worked with and what you do with them.
yeah. Well, honestly, this journey again started as a kid. Like, I just fell in love with worship music, Christian music, and for me, like, getting to work with some of these people is a dream come true. Like, it's not a
Yeah.
stepping stone for me. It's like I remember. So it was COVID, and we had kind of partnered up with another company out of the UK, and they were like, "Hey, you're in Nashville. COVID's happening. Everybody's home. What if we reach out to some of these artists and create these really intimate concerts and stuff like that?" And so we spent June and July of 2020. We rented Dark Horse Studios in Franklin, Tennessee, built out a set in the control room, and we filmed close to 40 concerts over a couple months
Mm.
of different things. Well, through that, for Christmas, one of the guys that was involved was good friends with the guys that run Awakening Events, who also book a lot of Chris Tomlin tours. And so they were trying to we were trying to get Chris on it was called Stable, and on the Stable platform. And they said, "Hey, we love doing a Christmas tour, and we obviously can't tour Christmas. What if we did a Christmas show with Tomlin?" And that was one of those things when I heard rumblings of that might happen, I thought, man, that it would be amazing, but it's not going to happen. Whatever. And then, long story short, there I am. And the night before, I'm like, what the heck am I doing? Like, I'm getting ready to direct maybe the biggest Christian artist of all time, somebody who I've respected and admired from a distance for a long time. And now I get to like be a part of this team
I know.
and it was
Crazy.
really like, I was nervous, and I've been doing this long enough. I just don't get really nervous, but I just was like, I don't have what it takes. This is going to suck. Like, I'm not the right guy for this. Somebody made a mistake. Like, I mean, those are honest, like, really like feelings.
Right?
Like, I'm gonna screw this up. Like, I don't have the qualifications, whatever. And man, we went in there and we started going for it. And Chris and his team are just amazing. Like, they're so great. I've never been around a group of people. I was just talking to my wife about this last night, that like celebrate people as much as they do.
Mm-hmm.
And they're awesome. A quick story about that is this last Good Friday, they have this big meeting, and Good Friday is interesting because backstage it's like everybody, it's like record labels and artists, and because it's Nashville, it's hometown show,
Yeah.
and there's just a ton of people back there. And they Chris will do a little kind of pep talk, whatever, thank some people and stuff. And so we were standing back there, and we pray and all that stuff. And Chris's management company started handing out these baseball bats to some people that whatever. And this is not to name drop or whatever, but they're like, you know, all right, we got one for Cody, we got one for Carrie, Lainey Wilson was there, Willie from Duck Dynasty was there.
Yep.
And they're like Cory Reynolds, and I was like, what? I was like, no, they didn't just say my name. Like, they didn't say my name. And man, honestly, it was a really cool just picture of really belonging to something, feeling celebrated, feeling valued. And
yes,
so I can't say enough good about their team and all that. And Chris is, I mean, he's the same on stage as he is off. He's just, you know, I think he says it, that his desire is to help give language for people to worship God. And he does that so well. And it has been a dream come true to get to kind of now, you know, almost 3.5 years later, still being able to produce with them. And that's opened up some other doors to work with some amazing artists. But I mean, and I say this this isn't like false humility. I get to work with just some incredible teams, and I've gotten to ride on the coattails of some really talented people. Yeah. And I hope, and I think that I bring value and add value, but I, just really thankful. And it is truly, it's been a dream come true to get to work with some of these guys. And then now working with Concept Pixels, Eddie and the team that was in place have so many relationships already in Christian music and stuff like that. And so we just did Brandon Lake's filming for his Terra Flute tour in Charleston. And another small little dream come true is I'd been following this group called Sky Candy for a long time, and they do FPV drone work, and they're like best in the US, or some of the best. And they were some of the first that kind of went viral and whatever. And so we were able to hire them, and we were able to have FPV drones going in that we cut into iMag, as well as we captured. So we had 2 drones. We had one going around the stadium as an outdoor show.
No way.
We were fed those all via iMag, so we could tap those in iMag. But then, and some of these FPV shots are just
incredible. I bet. Oh,
it's so fun. It's just such a different viewpoint and just a whole different energy. And so now I'm just trying to figure out how to get FPV drones on every shoot, because it's incredible.
Exactly. I was just getting ready to say, you've got to figure out how to get that on every spec out that you do for every artist. It doesn't matter if they're indoor or outdoor. It's got to be on the sheet now. Yeah. That would have been probably one of the coolest things I would have seen. I mean, just imagine how technology has evolved. Like when DJI released their first Osprey, and then their Osprey 3, right? And those were like, you thought those were dope. I mean, they were gigantic, monstrosities of alien looking technology. But now we're at doing FPV drones that are able to cast that somewhere so you can see it and pull the video feed and use that live in a scenario. I mean, just the incredible amounts of technology that's come out of this. But I think you nailed it. And I think you nailed the I mean, you've dropped all the names, that you've worked with, or the people. So that's great. And if you're watching this all the way through this video and you're listening to this in the car or whatever, I think the thing that to take away from Cory and especially from, other artists is there's a level of humility, right? It's not about them. And that's the thing that we should all be taking from everything that we do. It's not about us, right? So that's the important part of that process. But that was super cool, man. Like, you contacted BoxCast, you got a hold of me.
Yeah.
Well, let's go back for a second.
Yeah.
You contacted BoxCast. You signed up for an account with us under your old company. You bought into our system, and then you reached out to me. And I can tell you the franticness on my face was like, you guys don't understand what this dude's doing. And so it took me like 15 minutes of convincing my boss why we should like begin to work with you. And then at that point, you and I have developed a really cool relationship and have seen, the last 2 years how BoxCast has sponsored Chris Tomlin's Good Friday services and the amazing amounts of attention that come to that. And possibly the number of hearts that have come to the Lord from it, is probably an incredible thought. So, we're honored as much as you are. We're honored to work with you, Cory, like to get to talk with you. Like that's a highlight of my day. And when I get to speak with you. So you talk about humility to the people you're working for and with, like there's a humility level for us too. Like we're in the same boat. We really appreciate, all that you're doing with BoxCast and all the things that you're helping with, but more so the fact that, you love us. And the first thing I asked you is like, if you could recommend a piece of technology, it would be the BoxCaster Pro.
Yeah.
So thank you, friend.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm so grateful for the partnership with you guys, and yeah, your yes has been on the table, and just like help however you can. And I mean, honestly, like even this last week, ran into a little bit of a situation. And was online with support. And they were responsive on a holiday weekend, and I was just like, man,
yeah,
this
man,
is great. And so, you guys have been a great partner, and the stuff that we've done with Good Friday. There are certainly other vendors that could do it. You guys made it a joy though, and made it easy. And so I really appreciate that as well.
No, we appreciate that too, man. Well, it's always cool. Now, I want to end with one last story from you, just in the last few minutes we have here before we close up our interview and our talk. But you told me that there was some franticness at this past Good Friday service. Some really wonky things were occurring. You guys were all like flipping out, trying to get things done. Can you elaborate a little bit on the issue?
Yeah, it's funny that like, I think when you're at a 150 member church, or you're doing whatever, you think that things are all the details are all lined out. If I was just doing whatever, or I could say, I'm doing what I'm doing now. If I was just producing for whatever, Luke Bryan, or name it, whatever. What I've learned is like the problems just scale. And so like we were literally trying to figure out details on budget and licensing and all of that. I mean, down to the last second this year. And so literally Good Friday is on a Friday. I got a call at noon on Wednesday that it was actually going to happen.
Oh my goodness.
And so I was on a plane 2 hours later and in Nashville that evening. And Thursday we were loading in, and Friday we pulled off the event. And so it doesn't speak to anything other than just the specific circumstances that were this year. Was just like the details just fell into place at the last minute, and we were able to rally. And fortunately I have some amazing agile folks to call that are just, you guys included, that are just like, yeah, like what do we need to do? Like, how can we help? Let's do it.
Yeah.
And for some people that would probably stress them out, wear them out. I actually love it. And, I was like, my bag was, I have a suitcase that's kind of always like half packed. So it wasn't, it was like, yeah, let's go, let's do it. And yeah, it was wild. And the team, man, like from the touring crew to everybody just rallied and pulled it off. And it was easy. It was,
well,
I mean,
I will tell you, there were some incredible, like I showed that footage, because if you're still watching this BoxCast, we sponsored Chris Tomlin's a Good Friday service. It was amazing. And we're so glad that you guys are using us to do that. But there were like two shots. So Chris is coming, he's like coming down the walkway of the stage, and there's that one push-in shot that just comes so close to him, and that was one. And then there was this sweeping back shot that went from back behind him and came around him, that they were just like, my entire team was like, that is the most incredibly produced thing we've ever seen done on our platform. And that,
well,
that
the
right
cool
there,
thing is, it was like, obviously we had no time to produce anything. It was just, everybody just did their thing, and we've got great camera guys, and we have great lighting techs, and Chris is amazing. And it's like all of it, we just had to show up and everybody bring their best and capture. And yeah, I thank you. I think we did capture some really cool moments. And
you did.
Yeah.
You did. It was really, really good. Well, man, I was so stoked to have been able to have you on. We'll love to have you back again if you're up for it.
Anytime.
Great. Where can they find, where can they find Concept Pixels at, and how do they get a hold of you guys if they were looking for some information?
Yeah, conceptpixels.com. You can find me, Cory. I think my handle is Cory S. Reynolds on Instagram. And always happy to help. chat, whatever, church production, other production, whatever. And then Concept Pixels, we kind of specialize in a lot of LED stuff. So you have questions on LED. If you guys are looking for LED for your church or whatever, we'd be glad to help you guys. And cameras, obviously, all that stuff. Just love to be a resource for whoever needs it, because I know that, especially today, there's so many options, so many things.
Yeah.
Yeah. However we can help the community, man. We're in.
Gang, man, Cory, thank you again for being on this with us today, man. I'm very, very grateful. As a friend and a fellow nerd, I really appreciate it.
Heck yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, hey guys, listen. So again, drop your comments down below. Let us know what you think. Also, take a look at the description. You can get all the information down there. You can actually take a look at some of that footage. We have it in a couple of our ads, and I'm not sure, but if it's available on YouTube, we'll make sure that we can drop the link down below. But and all things, everything that goes through, we are very grateful for your time. We hope that you have an amazing day, and as always, happy streaming.